How are you guys doing? Today is Tuesday, January 18th, 2022. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to review the Elite matchups and performances that took place yesterday on Monday, January 17th. Taking a step back and taking a look at where we are as we are at the top of this 2022 calendar year. Taking a look at what's going on at the college ranks now that the college football season is over. The college basketball season is underway as teams are in the midst of their conference schedules. And taking a look at what's going on at the pro levels in the NFL, the amount of teams competing for Super Bowl 56 dropped from 9 to 8 as the last wildcard game from the NFC side was played yesterday. And of course, the NBA is in the midst of its regular season entering the second half, and so is soccer, considering we're at the top of the 2022 schedule. Starting, of course, with the college basketball game that was played yesterday, the lone matchup that featured two top 25 teams. The fourth-ranked Purdue Boilermakers would go to Illinois to face off against the 17th-ranked Fighting Illini. They gave Illinois their first Big Ten loss of the season. Purdue won this matchup 96-88 after they outscored Illinois 96-88 combined in the two overtimes to win this matchup. On the winning end of this matchup, the 17th-ranked Illinois Fighting Illini were led in scoring by their starting guard, Alfonso Plummer, out of Puerto Rico. He finished with 24 points in 43 minutes. He shot 8 for 19 from the field, 6 for 12 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. Their guard off the bench, Andre Curbelo, out of Puerto Rico, would go on to finish with 20 points himself. He would also add 6 rebounds in 26 minutes. He shot 8 for 15 from the field and 4 for 5 from the foul line. On the winning end of this matchup, the Purdue Boilermakers were led in scoring by their starting guard, Sasha Stefanovic, out of Crown Point, Indiana. He would go on to finish with 22 points and 8 rebounds in 41 minutes. He shot 6 for 11 from the field and 5 for 8 from 3. Their starting center, Zach Edey, finished with 20 points and 8 rebounds as well as 2 blocks in 27 minutes. He shot 9 for 14 from the field and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. With this win, the 4th-ranked Purdue Boilermakers are now 15-2. They are now 4-2 in the Big Ten for the time being. With this loss, the 17th-ranked Illinois Fighting Illini are 13-4. They are now 6-1 in the Big Ten. They currently hold the best record in the Big Ten right now, despite their first loss coming yesterday. Taking a look at what's going on today, starting off at 5 o'clock on ESPN2, the 5th-ranked defending champs Baylor Bears will face off against unranked West Virginia at West Virginia in Morgantown. At 7 o'clock, the 7th-ranked Kansas Jayhawks will go to Oklahoma, will go to Norman to face off against the unranked Oklahoma Sooners. At 7 o'clock, the 19th-ranked Ohio State Buckeyes are going to host unranked IUPUI as Ohio State is undefeated at home for the time being. At the same time, at 7 o'clock, the 25th-ranked UConn Huskies are going to host the unranked Butler Bulldogs on FS1 in the XL Center. Butler is 2-3 in the Big East, as 25th-ranked UConn is now 2-2 in the Big East. At 8 o'clock, the 10th-ranked Houston Cougars are going to host unranked South Florida. Houston is currently 4-0, still undefeated in the American Conference. At 8 o'clock, the 22nd-ranked Loyola Chicago Ramblers are going to face off against unranked University of Evansville. Loyola Chicago is currently sitting at 4-0 as they are sitting pretty high in the Missouri Valley Conference. Also, are taking place at 8:30, the 23rd-ranked Texas Longhorns are going to host the unranked Kansas State Wildcats on Longhorn Network. And then at 9 o'clock, my 6th-ranked Duke Blue Devils are going to go to Tallahassee to face off against the unranked Florida State Seminoles. Duke enters this matchup with a 4-1 ACC record. At the same time, at 9 o'clock, the 8th-ranked Wisconsin Badgers are going to face off against unranked Northwestern. Wisconsin comes into this matchup with a 5-1 Big Ten record. At the same time, at 9 o'clock, the 18th-ranked Texas Tech Red Raiders are going to host the 15th-ranked Iowa State Cyclones. Iowa State enters this matchup with a 2-3 Big 12 record. Texas Tech enters this matchup with a 3-2 Big 12 record. At the same time, at 9 o'clock, the unranked Vanderbilt Commodores are going to host the 24th ranked Tennessee Vanderbilts. Or Tennessee Volunteers. Tennessee enters this matchup with a 2-3 record in the SEC. Those are the college basketball games looking into today. Looking at the lone NFL game that shrunk the NFL in size from 9 teams to 8, the NFC West champions Los Angeles Rams hosted the Arizona Cardinals, and in this matchup, the LA Rams would beat the Cardinals 34-11, as they will be one of 2 teams from the NFC West that will advance to this round. Taking a look at the scoring in this matchup to look at how these 2 teams got here, the Rams outscored the Cardinals 21-0 in the first half, even went up by as much as 28-0, as the Rams outscored the Cardinals 13-11 in the second half. On the first half, their scoring would start with a 4-yard touchdown pass from Matt Stafford to Odell Beckham Jr. In the second quarter, Matt Stafford would run it for a yard to put them up 14-0. And then 4 minutes later, Kyler Murray would throw an interception to David Long, who went to my high school, Loyola High School, and he would end up returning it for 3 yards for his own touchdown to put the Rams up 21-0. In the third quarter, the Rams went up 28-0 after Matt Stafford threw a 7-yard touchdown pass to the NFL's receptions, receiving yards, and receiving touchdown leader Cooper Kupp. The Cardinals scored their lone touchdown of the game in the third quarter off of a 2-yard touchdown run from James Conner. Kyler Murray would throw a pass to Antoine Wesley on the 2-point conversion to make it 28-8 in favor of LA. The Rams would lead off the fourth quarter with a 37-yard field goal from Matt Gay to make it 31-8. Arizona would kick their lone field goal of the game with a 55-yarder from Matt Prater to put them down by 20. And the last score of the game would be a 46-yard field goal from Matt Gay to put the Rams up by 23 to end this matchup. Taking a look at how the Cardinals fared on the losing end of this matchup, in their final matchup of the 2021-22 campaign, they were led on offense by their elite starting quarterback, Kyler Murray, out of Oklahoma. He went on to complete 19 of his 34 passes as he threw for 137 yards and 2 interceptions. He also ran for 6 yards, so he had 143 total yards of offense. Their leading receiver was Christian Kirk. He had 6 receptions for 51 yards. And on the defensive side of the ball, the Cardinals were led in tackles by Jalen Thompson. He finished with 12 of them. Marcus Golden would finish with 3 tackles as he had the team's lone sack. On the winning end of this matchup, the LA Rams were led by their starting quarterback out of Georgia, Matt Stafford. Stafford would complete 13 of his 17 passes as he threw for 202 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also ran for 22 yards and an additional touchdown. That is 224 yards of offense and 3 touchdowns. Their leading rusher was Sony Michel. Michel had 13 carries for 58 yards on the ground. Their second leading carrier, Cam Akers, had 17 carries for 55 yards. He also had 40 yards through the air, so he had 95 total yards of offense. Their leading receiver was their elite wide receiver, Cooper Kupp. He had 5 receptions for 61 yards as he had a receiving touchdown. Their second leading receiver, Odell Beckham Jr. out of LSU, finished with 4 receptions for 54 receiving yards as he had a touchdown. He also had a 40-yard touchdown pass, so he had 94 total yards of offense. On the defensive side of the ball, the Rams were led in tackles by A'Shawn Robinson. Their elite defensive end, Von Miller, finished with 6 tackles as he finished with a sack for himself. And their goated defensive end, Aaron Donald, would finish with a tackle for himself as he had half a sack. Marquise Copeland would go on to finish with an interception as David Long had the team's other interception, a 3-yarder. In addition to that, he would go on to finish with a tackle as well. With this win, the Los Angeles Rams will be the last team to advance to the NFC divisional round, the 8th team to advance, or the 6th team to advance to this round. With this loss, the Arizona Cardinals will, of course, see their season come to an end. And, of course, as we transition into this next divisional round, I will get into that as it goes. But, of course, following this matchup, the Rams' next matchup will be in Tampa Bay against the Buccaneers on NBC on Sunday, January 23rd. So, of course, we're just going to wait up until then, as the NFL currently sits at 8 teams remaining. Taking a look at what went down in the NBA that's still in the midst of its season, starting off in Boston, the Celtics hosted the New Orleans Pelicans. The Celtics would end up beating the Pelicans 104-92. They won this matchup by 12 after they outscored the Pelicans by a combined 19 points in the second half. On the losing end of this matchup, the Pelicans were led in scoring by their starting center, Jonas Valanciunas. Valanciunas finished with 22 points and 14 rebounds in 33 minutes. He shot 9 for 17 from the field, and he would shoot a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. Their elite starting small forward out of Duke, Brandon Ingram, finished with 15 points, 10 rebounds, and 6 assists in 35 minutes. He shot 6 for 19 from the field and a perfect 3 for 3 from the foul line. On the winning end of this matchup, the Boston Celtics were led in scoring by their elite starting small forward out of Duke, Jason Tatum. Tatum finished with 27 points, 8 rebounds, and 3 assists in 38 minutes. He shot 9 for 18 from the field and 9 for 11 from the foul line. Their starting point guard, Dennis Schroeder, finished with 23 points, 5 rebounds, 9 assists, and 2 steals in 41 minutes. He shot 9 for 16 from the field, 3 for 5 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. Their starting shooting guard and former All-Star Jaylen Brown finished with 23 points and 8 rebounds in 35 minutes. He shot 8 for 17 from the field, 3 for 7 from 3, and a perfect 4 for 4 from the foul line. With this win, the Boston Celtics are now 23-22. At the moment, that is the 10th best record in the Eastern Conference as they've won their last 2 games. They've won 7 of their last 10. They sit half a game behind the 8th seed Washington Wizards out east. With this loss, the New Orleans Pelicans are now 16-28. That is currently the 3rd worst record in the Western Conference as they have the same record as the San Antonio Spurs. The Pelicans have lost their last 2 games. They've lost 6 of their last 10. And at the moment, they trail the 8th seed LA Clippers by 5.5 games out west. Taking a look at what went down in Madison Square Garden, the New York Knicks hosted the Charlotte Hornets. The Hornets would beat the Knicks 97-87. They won this matchup by 10 after they outscored the Knicks by a combined 18 points in the first half. On the losing end of this matchup, the New York Knicks were led in scoring by their starting power forward, Julius Randle out of Kentucky, and their starting shooting guard out of Duke, R.J. Barrett. Randle finished with 18 points and 10 rebounds in 31 minutes. He shot 6 for 16 from the field, 3 for 7 from 3, and he shot 3 for 4 from the foul line. R.J. Barrett finished with 18 points, 12 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals, and 6 turnovers in 39 minutes. He shot 7 for 18 from the field, and he would go on to shoot 2 for 4 from the foul line as well. On the winning end of this matchup, the Charlotte Hornets were led in scoring by their starting small forward, Miles Bridges. Bridges finished with 38 points, 12 rebounds, and 5 assists in 39 minutes. He shot 14 for 28 from the field, 5 for 9 from 3, and a perfect 5 for 5 from the foul line. And their starting shooting guard, Terry Rozier, finished with 22 points, 6 rebounds, and 7 assists in 35 minutes. He shot 8 for 18 from the field, 4 for 11 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. With this win, the Charlotte Hornets are now 24-20. That is the 7th best record in the Eastern Conference. They've won 7 of their last 10. They sit 4 games behind the Miami Heat and the Chicago Bulls, who are sitting at the top of the East, specifically the Chicago Bulls. With this loss, the New York Knicks are now 22-22. That is the 5th worst record in the Eastern Conference as they've only lost 4 of their last 10. They sit a full game behind the 8th seed Washington Wizards out east. Taking a look now at what went down in Washington, the Wizards hosted the Philadelphia 76ers. The Wizards would beat the Sixers 117-98, winning this matchup by 19. The Wizards outscored the Sixers by 9 in the first quarter and by 11 in the fourth. On the losing end of this matchup, the Sixers were led in scoring by their elite starting center, Joel Embiid. Embiid finished with 32 points and 8 rebounds in 29 minutes. He shot 10 for 20 from the field, 3 for 4 from 3, and he shot 9 for 10 from the foul line. On the winning end of this matchup, the Washington Wizards were led in scoring by their center off the bench, Montrezl Harrell out of Louisville. He would go on to finish with 18 points and 7 rebounds in 21 minutes. He shot 6 for 9 from the field and 6 for 7 from the foul line. Their elite starting shooting guard out of Florida, Bradley Beal, will go on to finish with 13 points, 5 rebounds, and 6 assists in 33 minutes. He shot 5 for 12 from the field, 1 for 3 from 3, and he shot 2 for 3 from the foul line. With this win, the Washington Wizards are now 23-21. That is the 8th best record in the East, as they've won 6 of their last 10. They trailed the Chicago Bulls by 5 games in the Eastern Conference. With this loss, the Philadelphia 76ers are now 25-18. That is the 6th best record in the Eastern Conference. They've lost only 2 of their last 10 games. They sit 2.5 games behind the Chicago Bulls, who are sitting on top of the East right now. Taking a look at what went down in Cleveland, the Cleveland Cavaliers hosted the Brooklyn Nets. The Cavs would beat the Nets 114-107. The Cavs won this matchup by 7 points after they outscored the Nets by 7 in the second quarter and by 8 in the fourth. On the losing end of this matchup, the Brooklyn Nets were led in scoring by their elite starting point guard out of Duke, Kyrie Irving. Irving finished with 27 points, 7 rebounds, and 9 assists in 38 minutes. He shot 12 for 23 from the field and 3 for 6 from 3. Their elite starting shooting guard, James Harden, finished with 22 points, 7 rebounds, 10 assists, and 2 steals in 40 minutes. He shot 5 for 12 from the field, 2 for 4 from 3, and 10 for 15 from the foul line. On the winning end of this matchup, the Cleveland Cavaliers were led in scoring by their starting point guard, Darius Garland. Garland finished with 22 points, 6 rebounds, 12 assists, 2 steals, and 6 turnovers in 36 minutes. He shot 10 for 19 from the field and 2 for 5 from 3. Their starting center, Jared Allen, finished with 14 points, 10 rebounds, and 2 blocks in 33 minutes. He shot a perfect 6 for 6 from the field and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. With this win, the Cleveland Cavaliers are now 27-18. That is the 4th best record in the Eastern Conference. They've won their last 5 games. That is the longest winning streak in the East, and that is the best streak in the NBA at the moment. The Cavs have won 7 of their last 10 games. They sit a game and a half behind the first seed Chicago Bulls at the moment. With this loss, the Brooklyn Nets are now 27-16. That is the 3rd best record in the West, as they've lost 6 of their last 10 games. They sit half a game behind the first seed Chicago Bulls for the time being. Taking a look now at what went down in Memphis, the Memphis Grizzlies hosted the Eastern Conference leading Chicago Bulls. The Grizzlies would beat the Bulls 119-106. The Grizzlies won by 13 in front of their hometown fans after they outscored the Bulls by 13 in the second quarter and by 7 in the third quarter by a combined 20 points in the middle 2 quarters. On the losing end of this matchup, the Chicago Bulls were led in scoring by their starting small forward, DeMar DeRozan. DeRozan finished with 24 points and 5 assists in 33 minutes. He shot 10 for 24 from the field and a perfect 4 for 4 from the foul line. Their starting shooting guard, Ayo Dosunmu out of Illinois, finished with 15 points, 10 rebounds, 6 assists, 5 steals, and 2 blocks in 38 minutes. He shot 7 for 12 from the field. On the winning end of this matchup, the Memphis Grizzlies were led in scoring by their elite starting point guard, Ja Morant, and then their starting shooting guard out of TCU, Desmond Bane. Morant finished with 25 points, 4 rebounds, and 3 assists in 32 minutes. He shot 9 for 17 from the field, 1 for 3 from 3, and 6 for 7 from the foul line. Desmond Bane finished with 25 points in 29 minutes. He shot 10 for 17 from the field, 3 for 7 from 3, and 2 for 3 from the foul line. With this win, the Memphis Grizzlies are now 31-15. That is 4 wins better than the Bulls, who have the best record in the East at the moment. The Grizzlies are holding the 3rd best record in the West, as they are the 3rd team in the NBA with 30-plus wins this season. They've won 9 of their last 10 games. They sit 4.5 games behind the Western Conference leading Phoenix Suns for the time being. With this loss, the Chicago Bulls are now 27-15. That is still the best record in the East, even though they've lost their last 4 games. They are tied with the Indiana Pacers for the worst losing streak in the Eastern Conference and in the NBA for that matter. The Bulls have lost 5 of their last 10 games. They sit even with the second place Miami Heat, as they've won 1 less game and they've lost 1 less game than the Heat. They sit half a game ahead of the 3rd seed Brooklyn Nets for the time being. Looking out at what went down in the Crypto.com arena, the LA Clippers hosted the Indiana Pacers. The Clippers would beat the Pacers 139-133. They won this matchup by 6 after they would go on to outscore the Pacers by 13 in the first quarter. On the losing end of this matchup, the Indiana Pacers were led in scoring by their starting shooting guard, Caris LeVert. LeVert finished with 26 points and 9 rebounds in 35 minutes as he fouled out in those 35 minutes. He shot 9 for 18 from the field, and he would shoot a perfect 6 for 6 from the foul line. Their shooting guard off the bench, Chris Duarte, finished with 24 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists, and 3 steals in 34 minutes. He shot 10 for 14 from the field, 2 for 5 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. Their starting power forward out of Gonzaga, Domantas Sabonis, finished with 19 points, 11 rebounds, 7 assists, and 2 blocks in 34 minutes. He shot 7 for 14 from the field and 5 for 7 from the foul line. On the winning end of this matchup, the Clippers were led in scoring by their starting power forward, Nick Batum. Batum finished with 32 points, 5 rebounds, and 2 blocks in 36 minutes. He shot 11 for 16 from the field, 7 for 10 from 3, and a perfect 3 for 3 from the foul line. Their starting point guard, Reggie Jackson, finished with 26 points, 5 rebounds, and 3 steals in 32 minutes. He shot 6 for 14 from the field and 13 for 14 from the foul line. Their starting small forward, Marcus Morris Sr., finished with 21 points and 8 rebounds in 38 minutes. He shot 8 for 13 from the field, 3 for 5 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. With this win, the Los Angeles Clippers are now 22-23. That is the 8th best record in the Western Conference as they've won 4 of their last 10. They sit 13 games behind the first seed Phoenix Suns for the time being. With this loss, the Indiana Pacers are now 15-29. That is the 3rd worst record in the Eastern Conference. They've lost their last 4 games. They are tied with the Chicago Bulls for the worst losing streak in the NBA. They've lost 9 of their last 10 games, and at the moment they sit 8 games behind the 8th seed Washington Wizards out east. Jumping out to Atlanta, the Hawks hosted the defending champs Milwaukee Bucks. The Hawks would end up beating the Bucks 129-114 to end their NBA-long 5-game losing streak. The Hawks would win this matchup by 7 after they outscored the Bucks by a combined 19 points in the second half. They outscored the Bucks by 12 in the fourth quarter to overcome their 5-point deficit going in. On the losing end of this matchup, the Milwaukee Bucks, the defending champs, were led in scoring by their starting small forward, Chris Middleton. Middleton finished with 34 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks, 8 turnovers, and 5 fouls in 35 minutes. Middleton shot 11 for 22 from the field, 4 for 9 from 3, and a perfect 8 for 8 from the foul line. Their elite starting power forward and last year's NBA Finals MVP, Giannis Antetokounmpo, would finish with 27 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, and 5 turnovers in 37 minutes. He shot 8 for 20 from the field, 1 for 3 from 3, and 10 for 4 from the foul line. On the winning end of this matchup, the Atlanta Hawks on MLK Day were led by their elite starting point guard Trae Young in scoring. Young finished with 30 points, 4 rebounds, and 11 assists in 40 minutes. He shot 7 for 17 from the field, 2 for 6 from 3, and a perfect 14 for 14 from the foul line. Their starting small forward out of Virginia, DeAndre Hunter, would finish with 20 points and 9 rebounds in 35 minutes. He shot 6 for 17 from the field, and he would go on to shoot a perfect 6 for 6 from the foul line. Also in their starting lineup, their starting power forward, John Collins, finished with 16 points, 12 rebounds, and 3 blocks in 31 minutes. He shot 5 for 15 from the field, 3 for 9 from 3, and 3 for 4 from the foul line. Going back to the Bucks, their starting center, Bobby Portis, finished with 13 points and 13 rebounds in 32 minutes as he shot 6 for 12 from the field. With this win, the Atlanta Hawks are now 18-25. That is the 4th worst record in the Eastern Conference. They've won 3 of their last 10 games, and they sit 4.5 games behind the 8th seed Washington Wizards out east for the time being. With this loss, the defending champs Milwaukee Bucks are now 27-19. That is the 5th best record in the Eastern Conference. They've lost their last 2 games, and they've lost 6 of their last 10. They sit 2 games behind the Eastern Conference leading Chicago Bulls for the time being. Taking a look now at what went down in Orlando, Florida, the Magic hosted the Portland Trail Blazers. The Blazers would end up beating the Magic 98-88. The Trailblazers would win this matchup by 10 after they outscored the Magic by 14 in the first half and by 20 in the first three quarters, if you're counting up all that. On the losing end of this matchup, the hometown Orlando Magic were led in scoring by their starting small forward Franz Wagner out of Michigan and their center off the bench Mo Wagner, his older brother. Franz Wagner finished with 14 points and 5 rebounds in 32 minutes as he shot 7 for 18 from the field. Mo Wagner finished with 14 points and 2 blocks as he would go on to play 15 minutes. He shot 5 for 9 from the field, 2 for 4 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. On the winning end of this matchup, the Portland Trailblazers were led in scoring by their starting center Jusuf Nurkic. Nurkic finished with 21 points and 22 rebounds, as well as 4 steals, 2 blocks, and 6 turnovers in 36 minutes. He would go on to shoot 10 for 21 from the field and 1 for 2 from the foul line. Their starting small forward, Nasir Little, out of North Carolina, finished with 13 points, 10 rebounds, all this in 35 minutes as he shot 4 for 9 from the field and a perfect 5 for 5 from the foul line. With this win, the Portland Trailblazers are now 18-25. That is the 10th best record in the Western Conference. They've won their last 2 games and they've won 5 of their last 10. They currently sit 3 games behind the 8th seed LA Clippers out west. With this loss, the Orlando Magic are now 8-37. They currently hold the worst record in the NBA. They are the lone team in the NBA that still has a single-digit amount of wins as they are 45 games into the season. They've lost their last 2 games. They've lost 9 of their last 10. And at the moment, they sit 15.5 games behind the 8th seed Washington Wizards out east. Taking a look at what went down in Miami, just a couple hours south, the Heat would host the Toronto Raptors. The Miami Heat would beat the Toronto Raptors 104-99. They won this matchup by 5 after they outscored the Raptors by 10 in the second quarter. On the losing end of this matchup, the Raptors were led in scoring by their starting shooting guard out of Wichita State, or at least he led the starters in scoring. Their leading scorer was Chris Boucher off the bench. Their power forward finished with 23 points, 10 rebounds, and 2 blocks in 38 minutes as he shot 7 for 13 from the field, 2 for 4 from 3, and 7 for 9 from the foul line. Their starting shooting guard, Fred VanVleet, would go on to finish with 22 points and 5 turnovers in 41 minutes. He shot 7 for 17 from the field, 6 for 16 from 3, and he would go on to shoot a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. Their starting power forward, Pascal Siakam, finished with 18 points, 6 rebounds, 10 assists, and 5 steals in 42 minutes. He shot 9 for 20 from the field. On the winning end of this matchup, the hometown Miami Heat were led in scoring by their guard off the bench, Tyler Hero. Hero finished with 23 points and 2 steals in 34 minutes. He shot 8 for 16 from the field, 1 for 3 from 3, and a perfect 6 for 6 from the foul line. Their elite starting small forward out of Marquette, Jimmy Butler, finished with 19 points, 10 rebounds, and 10 assists in 36 minutes. He shot 6 for 14 from the field and 7 for 8 from the foul line. With this win, the Miami Heat are 28-16. They are now holding the second best record in the East. They've won one more game and they've lost one more game than the Bulls have, so they sit about even with them in terms of they're not any games behind them. But right now, they're holding that number 2 seed as they also sit half a game ahead of the 3rd seed Brooklyn Nets for the time being. With this loss, the Toronto Raptors are 21-20. That is the 9th best record in the Eastern Conference. They've only lost 3 of their last 10 games, and they only sit half a game behind the 8th seed Washington Wizards out east. Taking a look at what went down in Dallas, Texas, the Mavericks hosted the Oklahoma City Thunder from just one state north. The Mavericks would beat the Thunder 104-102. They won this matchup by 2 after they outscored the Thunder by 9 in the first quarter, 11 for the first half. On the losing end of this matchup, the Oklahoma City Thunder were led in scoring by their starting point guard out of Kentucky, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander finished with 34 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, and 2 steals in 37 minutes. He shot 11 for 18 from the field, and he would go on to shoot 11 for 12 from the foul line as he shot 1 for 4 from 3. On the winning end of this matchup, the Dallas Mavericks were led in scoring by their elite starting point guard, Luka Doncic. Their Slovenian point guard would go on to finish with 20 points, 11 rebounds, 12 assists, 3 steals, and 3 blocks in 39 minutes. He shot 4 for 17 from the field, and he would shoot 12 for 14 from the foul line. Their starting power forward, Dorian Finney-Smith, finished with 17 points, 10 rebounds, and 2 steals in 34 minutes. He shot 6 for 11 from the field, 4 for 7 from 3, and he would shoot 1 for 2 from the foul line. With this win, the Dallas Mavericks are now 25-19. That is the 5th best record in the Western Conference. They've won their last 3 games, and they've won 9 of their last 10. They sit 9.5 games behind the Western Conference leading Phoenix Suns. With this loss, the Oklahoma City Thunder are now 14-29. That is the 2nd worst record in the Western Conference. They've lost their last 2 games, and they've lost 8 of their last 10. They currently sit 7 games behind the 8 seed Los Angeles Clippers outside of the Western Conference playoff picture. Jumping out to San Antonio within the same state, the Spurs hosted the Phoenix Suns. The Suns would end up beating the Spurs 121-107. The Suns won this matchup by 14 after they outscored the Spurs by 18 in the 4th quarter to overcome their 4-point deficit. On the losing end of this matchup, the hometown Spurs were led in scoring by their starting center out of Utah, Jakob Poeltl. Poeltl finished with 23 points and 14 rebounds, as well as 2 blocks in 30 minutes. He shot 9 for 12 from the field, and he shot 5 for 7 from the foul line. On the winning end of this matchup, the Phoenix Suns were led in scoring by their elite starting shooting guard out of Kentucky, Devin Booker. He finished with 48 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, and 3 steals in 35 minutes. He would go on to shoot 18 for 13 from the field, 5 for 13 from 3, and he would shoot 7 for 8 from the foul line. Their center off the bench, Bismack Biyombo, had finished with 17 points and 14 rebounds in 25 minutes. He shot 8 for 10 from the field. The Suns' elite starting point guard out of Wake Forest, Chris Paul, finished with 15 points, 2 rebounds, 12 assists, 2 steals, and 2 blocks in 32 minutes. The 11-time NBA All-Star shot 7 for 12 from the field and 1 for 4 from 3. With this win, the Phoenix Suns are now 34-9. That is the best record in the West and the best record in the NBA. They are still the only team in the NBA that has a single-digit amount of losses. They've won their last 4 games, which is the longest winning streak in the Western Conference for the time being. They've won 8 of their last 10 games. They now sit 3 games ahead of the second-place Golden State Warriors in the conference. With this loss, the San Antonio Spurs are now 16-28. That is the 4th worst record in the Western Conference. They've lost 8 of their last 10 games. They sit 5.5 games behind the 8 seed LA Clippers, just to get a sense of where they sit. Last but not least, returning to the Crypto.com arena, the Los Angeles Lakers hosted the Utah Jazz. The Lakers would beat the Jazz 101-95. The Lakers won this matchup by 6 after they outscored the Jazz by 12 in the 4th quarter to overcome their 6-point deficit going in. On the losing end of this matchup, the Utah Jazz were led in scoring by their starting point guard, Mike Conley. Their former All-Star finished with 20 points in 28 minutes as he shot 6 for 12 from the field, 5 for 9 from 3, and he would shoot 3 for 4 from the foul line. Their elite starting center, Rudy Gobert, finished with 19 points and 16 rebounds, as well as 3 blocks in 37 minutes. He shot 6 for 8 from the field and 7 for 8 from the foul line. The Jazz elite starting shooting guard out of Louisville, Donovan Mitchell, finished with 13 points, 8 rebounds, and 7 assists in 37 minutes. He shot 6 for 19 from the field, and he made his only free throw attempt of the day. On the winning end of this matchup, the hometown Lakers were led in scoring by their goated starting small forward, LeBron James. The 4-time NBA Finals MVP finished with 25 points, 7 rebounds, and 7 assists in 37 minutes. He shot 9 for 20 from the field, 3 for 8 from 3, and 4 for 8 from the foul line. Their elite starting point guard, or their goated starting point guard and the NBA's all-time leader in triple-doubles, Russell Westbrook, would finish with 15 points, 8 rebounds, and 3 assists in 28 minutes. He shot 5 for 14 from the field, 1 for 4 from 3, and he made all 4 of his foul lines on the night. With this win, the LA Lakers are now 22-22. That is the 7th best record in the Western Conference. They've won 6 of their last 10. They now sit 12.5 games behind the Suns in the Western Conference. With this loss, the Utah Jazz are now 29-15. That is the 4th best record in the West. They've lost 6 of their last 10. At the moment, they sit 5.5 games behind the Western Conference leading Phoenix Suns. That is what the NBA is looking like following yesterday's matchups, and of course, taking a look at what is going on today with today's Tuesday matches, starting off with the primetime games, the Both games will be on prime time on NBA TV. At 7:30, the New York Knicks are going to host the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Knicks are currently holding the 5th worst record in the Eastern Conference at the moment. The Minnesota Timberwolves are holding on to the 9th best record in the West, as both teams feel like they need to win this game. And also, at 10 o'clock, the Golden State Warriors, who hold the 2nd best record in the West, are going to host the Detroit Pistons, who hold the 2nd worst record in the East, to get a glimpse of how they're playing. While it's Steph Curry against Cade Cunningham, that is the matchup that many are looking at. Taking a look at what went down in the world of soccer, starting off in the African Cup of Nations, Ethiopia was able to beat Burkina Faso, both teams were able to draw at 1. As a result of these matchups, Burkina Faso will advance as Ethiopia ended up getting eliminated. And then Cape Verde Islands in Cameroon would end up drawing at 1. Cameroon would end up winning the table, so they will, of course, advance. Cape Verde has to wait and see how the other teams place, as Group A is officially the very first group that has been finished. Taking a look at what went down in the Serie A yesterday, AC Milan, the Serie A runners-up for the time being, will go on to face off against Spezia. Spezia would beat AC Milan 2-1 after they would equalize and take the lead in the second half off of a 64th minute goal from Kevin Agudelo and their 96th minute goal from Emmanuel Gyasi. And because AC Milan failed to pick up the points, they still sit 2 points behind Inter Milan with one more game played, which gives Inter a little bit of free space to create room between them and AC Milan. Napoli was able to beat Bologna 2-0, and with this win, Napoli now sits 3rd in Serie A, 2 points behind AC Milan and 4 points behind Inter. And then not to mention Fiorentina was able to beat Genoa 6-0, but Fiorentina at the moment is sitting 6th in Serie A as they are still competing for what could possibly be left for them for tournaments. And also taking a look at what went down yesterday in the Premier League, Brighton and Hove Albion is going to face off against Chelsea today at 3 o'clock. For the moment, Chelsea is holding the 3rd best record in the Premier League. A win here could see them temporarily leapfrog Liverpool for that 2nd spot. And then looking at what's going on in the German DFB Pokal in the round of 16, Borussia Dortmund's going to face off against St. Pauli. So that's going to be the matchup there. And then looking at the Italian Coppa d'Italia in the round of 16, Juventus is going to host Sampdoria, and Lazio is going to host Udinese in Rome. Not to mention the African Cup of Nations will host the last group stage matchups for what is Groups B and Group C, as the Group B matchups will feature Malawi and Senegal, and then Zimbabwe and Guinea. Those matchups will take place at 11. And then the Group C matchups are going to feature Morocco and Gabon at 2 o'clock, and then Ghana is going to face off against Comoros Island at 2. So that is what the world of sports is looking like right now, as we have all of the previews or the reviews from yesterday's matchups and all the previews for today, Tuesday, January 18th. And once all of today's exhibitions and matchups are done, I'm going to come back tomorrow on Wednesday, January 19th for another episode of The Elite. And with that said, I want to thank everyone for listening. I hope all is well, and I'll catch you with another episode tomorrow. Peace out.